Hi everybody, and welcome to Making Stuff with Mr. Hoon. This particular episode is dedicated to my Drawing 1 class. When we left off, we were in the middle of some great exercises. They also had a personal drawing underway. We'll get to that in the future. I thought I'd do a little exercise with you folks today. I was hoping you'd follow along. You'll notice in your Google Classroom that there's actually a video clip that I was hoping you would read, and there's a question that you can answer. Now, I'm going to switch over to a different angle so that you can see something that we did in Drawing 1 together to illustrate a concept, and then we're going to talk about merging another concept in with it. So, give me just a moment, and we'll get her done. You'll notice right here we have a sphere, and that rhymes. Now there's a term up here that I wrote that's a little bit far away for you to see, but this represents a page that we did together in a Drawing 1 class. There's some learning targets up here. I can draw a rectangle centered on a sketchbook page using a ruler and a pencil. I can draw a circle within the newly drawn frame space using a pencil. I can draw and fill negative space around the circle with permanent marker. I can use stippling to create the illusion of light, depth, form, space, value, and contrast. Then I have this Italian Renaissance term, chiarascuro. And we talked a little bit about chiaroscuro's role in visual art history and what it means to us now. We look at a picture plane, when we see an object emerging from the darkness, we're looking at the illusion of chiaroscuro, which simply means light and dark. But in this case, Italian Renaissance artists like Caravaggio were exploring this and taking it in new directions and in fabulous ways in the early 16th century Common Era. Now, what I'd like to do is continue this idea of drawing what we see instead of what we think we see as a way to strengthen your drawing ability so that you can draw from your imagination with more confidence. So I like to combine chiaroscuro with an old idea that I got from a professor of mine. His name was John Rollins. He taught at Flathead Valley Community College, where I took my undergrad classes. My Associate of Arts degree was at a community college, the first 2 years of my college. And that particular art professor taught me something very valuable, and that was to draw better what you see representationally. To improve your skill level with drawing what you see, first of all, you should draw all the time. Secondly, you should not be concerned with mistakes at all. And what he meant by that was, if you draw enough, the evidence of that drawing should show you should have constant mistakes. Every time you draw, it's not a finished product. It's just an exercise. I've really taken that to heart when I try to teach my students. Now, of course, there are certain drawings that mean something to you, and as they progress, they become more and more interesting, and therefore you're going to dedicate more and more time. And when you dedicate more and more time, you're invested in them. You want them to succeed. But his point was, not every drawing's like that. In fact, those are rare. And he had a good way of breaking the bad habit, as he saw it, of people drawing with serious intention every time they made a mark, and drawing gesturally and loosely. And he had a way of forcing us to do that. He had these pens. They weren't pencils, they were pens. And on the end of the pen, there was a little motor, like a Tonka truck motor, like motor you'd see on some kind of a vibrating tattoo gun or something, and it had an oscillator, meaning it spun. It was a weight that spun around in a circle, and it created centrifugal force. So at the end of this pen, you'd have this thing that was constantly moving, constantly moving. It was hard to actually move it and hold it still. It was constantly moving. It was like grabbing onto a beetle that wanted to fly away and trying to draw with it. Now, if that doesn't break that bad habit of thinking that every drawing that you make is the best darn thing since sliced bread, then nothing will. Now, I don't have these amazing pens that shake in your hands, but I am going to ask you to draw loosely using scumbling. And we're going to combine the idea of scumbling and gesture drawing with chiarascuro. And I think that as the drawing progresses, you'll see where I'm going with this. Now I'm going to take a portrait of my youngest daughter, Jillian, right there. And I'm going to use it as the object that I'm going to be drawing. So I'm going to flip a page. Let's find a fresh one. We can actually draw, peeps. Oh, heavens. Hold this easel back up a little bit for you. And as you can see, I have my cute crayon pen. This is actually a rollerball pen. If you twist the end of it, it's like a ballpoint pen on the end. I'm actually going to be drawing with the classic old rollerball or ballpoint pen. Again, big, fat, stupid kind of pen. It's not archival ink. It will fade over time. This is an exercise. The more we do these exercises, the better we become at our drawing ability and our ability to draw things from our imagination. So I will be looking for you to participate in this. We're going to call it the Scribble Portrait. Now, what I'd like you to do is find a picture out of a magazine, any photograph from home, put it next to your sketchbook and use it as a way, or try to draw what you see, not what you think you know, what you see using these techniques that I'm going to explore with you. Now I'm going to zoom in on her face, and I'll just take the portrait and put it up here, right here, like this. I'm going to zoom in on this area, and instead of doing a hard contour line like I'm used to here, I'm going to start in the center and I'm going to move out. And just like I taught you, or my drawing class, just like we explored the idea of filling in mass by scribbling in, that doesn't mean that we're not measuring angles and bringing it back to the paper. It simply means that we're not as concerned with detail yet. We are still thinking about how far apart shapes are, the P word, proportion. We're still thinking about where objects are, but we're going to be scribbling. And as we scribble, we're going to be scribbling this whole face in. So wherever we see space, we're going to scribble it in. Now, an area like this, or like this in the forehead of the picture, there's going to be less scribbling. And as we get over to the side, there's going to be more. And then in an area like this, the scribbling and scumbling is going to be so overlapped that you won't see any white of the paper left behind. We are moving toward chiarascuro. And in the background, we're going to scumble and scribble and crosshatch to such an extent that it just becomes thick with ink. So, starting in the center of the face, the eyes, the triangle of the eyes, the nose is a really good place to start, and then we'll build our proportion around that. So I'll put this down. Again, we're going to fill the page with the face and part of the head and shoulders and stuff. That'll be off the picture plane. That's okay. So let me position the photograph. Now, occasionally there will be times when I'm silent, and occasionally I'll be speaking about what my thoughts are. My hope is that you pause the video, you set your own drawing up, and you draw with me, and we just draw together, while the YouTube video is going. And of course, since it's a YouTube video, you're certainly welcome to pause it anytime you need to. All right, peeps. Let's do it. You know, there's a drawing technique called blind contour. And in blind contour, the person drawing is encouraged to draw the whole time while never lifting their finger off the page. Also, in blind contour, which is not what I'm doing, by the way, I'm doing something kind of like it, where my page is very rarely lifting, or my pen is very rarely lifting off the page. But also in blind contour, you are just looking at what you're drawing, like in this case, just the picture of the portrait, right? You're never looking at the page. And that's another drawing technique that's really valuable. And it breaks you of the idea of, oh, every drawing I do has got to be a masterpiece. It's got to be this totally awesome thing, you know, blah, blah, blah. No, that's not the case. Drawing is an exercise. So I think you can see now why I'm calling it a scribble drawing or scribble portrait. Because really there's no area in the portrait that is untouched by the ink. And as I move over the surface of the forehead, you see I'm actually thinking about the curvature of skin, flesh. And as we move, the details, they come last. You know, I've told my students in my drawing class, hey, don't worry so much about detail, especially first. You're filling in shape, you're filling in form, you're not filling in detail until last. Every once in a while, stop, look at the image. In the image, look at areas of proportion and where areas should be darkened and where they should not. I left very little of the face untouched. Yes, in highlight areas, there's not as much scumbling, but it's still covered. It's a part It's a part of her face. Adds to the texture of her face. And then as I do details, that's when I slow down, and the scumbling is replaced by more deliberate mark making. There's a part up here. So I'm going to use a little bit more pressure with the ballpoint there to show the part in the hair. And I think that when you watch the YouTube video link in the Google Classroom that I placed there for you, the little tutorial on gesture drawing will make a little bit more sense in light of what I'm doing here. Thinking of drawing as an exercise rather than an end product every time. So yes, the finished product is quite ghostly. Again, chiarascuro, the image emerging from the darkness. Oh, he's drawn with a ballpoint pen, man. How can you take that seriously, dude? What if he makes a mistake? Constantly making mistakes, man. That's the point. What I'm not concerned with is making a mistake. I'm just covering it up. I'm letting my hand move loosely, and with that comes a heightened sense of hand-eye coordination that, I mean, here, let's boil it down. Here's the variables. Time, practice, mark making, hand-eye coordination, sight, brain, effort. As you can see, I've just got the beginnings of my scumbling portrait, my scribble portrait, and I can go into areas and I can say, all right, I'm going to start picking out some details here. Or I notice that there's a little bit more shading here along the chin or under the cheek here. I notice that there might be some curvature in the lips that I'm missing. I notice that I need to emphasize or re-emphasize the top eyelid, I notice that I need to re-emphasize the portion of the eye that's showing. I mean, all of this you do as the drawing progresses, and you can take as much time as you need to on your Scribble Portrait, or my friends, you can leave it like this. Now, what I would prefer is that you go full on chiarascuro and look at that thing and surround it with darkness. And if you want to just keep on going in here with ballpoint pen and making this all rich, glossy, super dark with ballpoint, that's fine. Or you can do what we did here, which is surround the thing with a permanent marker and then let the pen emerge out of the darkness. Really, the rest is up to you. All right, listen, peeps. This is Mr. Hoon with Drawing One, making stuff with Mr. Hoon. Signing off. Later.